So I am delighted to welcome Christine Dawson here today for this ANLP virtual workshop. One of my most valuable things in life is time. So I'm really excited to be introducing Christine, who is talking about the illusion of time. So Christine, over to you.
Thanks, Karen, and thanks very much, Karen and Cash, for inviting me along today. I'm thrilled to meet you all. And I really hope that I can encourage you to do a bit of thinking today. So, as Karen said, my name's Christine Dawson, and I'm a master trainer of NLP and hypnosis. And I've been in the business of coaching and NLP training for nearly 20 years now. So I've been around for a while. And one of the things that I get really interested in is thinking beyond the boundaries that we normally think within. And that's one of the things that I'd like to put out there today into this wonderful workshop with all you lovely people. And I want to think about how our world and how NLP interacts with the quantum world, with quantum mechanics and quantum thinking. It's one of my key interests. I just love thinking about the universe and how we operate within it. So that's the basis of what I'm here to talk to you about today. So a bit of pre-framing just before we begin. If you have questions, if you could put them in the chat just to hold them there, what I'll do is I'll leave some time at the end for you to ask your questions. And, I'm kind of hoping that it's not going to be questions that you want to share because I'm really interested in your thoughts and your ideas about what I'm going to share. And hopefully we'll be able to have a little discussion at the end rather than a question and answer section. So if you have any thoughts, you have any questions, put them in the chat and then we'll come to them at the end, if that's okay with everybody. So today, I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm not here to give you any cold hard facts. I'm not even here to tell you a universal truth. I'm here to tell you a truth, my truth, maybe anybody's truth. And what I really want you to do is just maybe suspend your disbelief for a little while, that bypassing of the critical faculty, opening that trap door between conscious and unconscious thoughts, and just allow yourself to imagine something different. And maybe to ask yourself a what if question. What if time is just a construct of human consciousness? What if time's actually an illusion? What then? So I'm just going to share some images with you because for those visual learners, you'll like to see some images. Okay. So we're here to think about the illusion of time. And before we do that, I want to start the way any good NLP training or workshop starts, and one you're probably very used to. Once there was a gardener, and he loved his garden more than anything. And every morning he'd walk through the rows of flowers, touching their petals lovingly, remembering when he planted each one. There was a rose he'd planted after a heartbreak. There was an oak that he'd nurtured over the years through storms, and a tiny patch of herbs that somehow had survived a drought. And as the years passed, the soil grew tired. Weeds kept in. And the gardener, He tried to save every single plant, even those that were long past their season of growth. He wanted everything, and he watered everything, and he nurtured everything, even the roots that could no longer drink. One day, a passerby stopped to admire his garden, and he said, "Your garden is so beautiful. And I have noticed that you spend all your time looking after what was past, looking backward. When will you plant something new?" That night, the gardener finally picked up his shovel and he pulled out what no longer grew. And it hurt to let go of what once bloomed. And when morning came, he found there was space for sunlight again. And we know how important light is, especially the light in a lighthouse. And the lighthouse keeper has a simple job: keep the lights on. Every night, the lighthouse keeper climbed the spiral stairs, checked the lamp, polished the glass, and looked out at the horizon. Ships passed safely because of the light. He often wondered, what if no one actually sees it? Will my work go unnoticed? And one stormy night, lightning struck the coast and the power went out. And the sea roared, and the lighthouse keeper was left in darkness. For a long moment he froze. Then, from memory, he found the backup lantern. He lit it by hand and carried it to the top of the lighthouse, and the light burned again. Not as bright, just enough. When dawn came, he looked out and he saw debris scattered along the shore, and a single note in a bottle that had washed up near his feet. He travelled towards it, and he came to the edge of a vast canyon. Across the gap lay a land that he'd only heard stories about, a place of success, joy, and fulfillment. And as he looked across the canyon, between him and that future was only mist. He couldn't see the path ahead. There was no bridge, no map, just whispers of possibility. Some travellers turned back, waiting for the fog to clear, and others tried to jump across the canyon and fell short. And this traveller, he took a single step, and to his surprise, the mist beneath his foot hardened into stone. He took another step and another, and with each one, the bridge built itself. Not before him, beneath him, supporting his journey. And when he finally reached the other side, he turned and saw the bridge stretching behind him. It was now solid and seemed to glow in the morning sun. And then he knew a truth that he would know forever. So, the illusion of time. So, what if time is an illusion? What if time is just a construct of human consciousness? Think about your identity and how your identity is shaped through a story that's told by traces of the past. So let's think about the past and of time slightly differently. Let's think about exploring time. So here I'm offering you the opportunity to push your thinking beyond your subjective experience and to open your mind to something new, some new thinking. And by applying quantum physics and quantum thinking, we get a deeper way of thinking, So the idea that time's an illusion isn't simply just an existential thought. It's a concept that's grounded in the study of physics. So if we look at the realm of quantum mechanics, the perception of time in quantum mechanics is fascinating. Some physicists will argue that at a fundamental level, time doesn't even exist at all. If you've ever read the work of a theoretical physicist called Carlo Rovelli, he explores this idea in his book, The Order of Time, and I can recommend it if you're interested in this type of topic. And he states the difference between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. So in his work, he suggests that our linear perception of time, where moments passed from future to present to past, is simply a construct of our human consciousness rather than any sort of reflection of reality. And we know from our NLP studies that, of course, reality is subjective. Julian Barber, a British physicist, also supports this type of thinking. And he says that all time is merely a series of nows. So in his view, all moments in time exist at the same time, simultaneously. And what we perceive as the passage of time is simply the way that we navigate through those moments of nows. So Barber's perspective aligns with our thinking that time is not an external entity. It's rather an internal mechanism that works inside of us, and it orders our experiences. So for those of you who haven't studied NLP yet, and I really hope there's some of you there because it's great that you've taken an interest in NLP, I just want to explain what I mean by subjective experiences, because the whole fundamental principle of NLP is based on the fact that all experience is subjective. Now, let me explain what that means. So, subjective experience is best described by the NLP model of communication. And those of you who studied NLP, this is bread and butter to you. And those of you who haven't, I hope that it will reveal something that you haven't really thought of yet. So we have events. We have events outside of us. We have an environment, and we're constantly in an environment. And somehow the details of that environment have to get from out there to in here. So the way that that happens is we intake all of the information through our 5 senses. Visual, our sight; auditory, our hearing; kinesthetic, our sense of feeling and touch; olfactory, our sense of smell; and gustatory, our sense of taste. And there's tons of information coming at us every second of every day. In fact, there's so much data, it's somewhere in the order of 12 million bits per second of information. Now, anybody who knows anything about computing will know that that's a huge amount of data, way more than your very limited conscious mind can handle. So this is where your unconscious mind, which is simply that part of your mind that you're not consciously aware of right now, that's where it starts to manage that information to turn it into something that you can consciously handle. And it does that through a process of deletion. So some of the information is disregarded. Distortion. Some of the information is changed so that it fits your model of the world, how you see reality. So, for example, every time you create something, you think of a future, you're distorting. Every time you rehearse a speech that you're going to give later, you're distorting your reality. So the information is handled in that way. And then some of that information you generalize. So you generalize all the time. You have to in order to learn. So, for example, at some point, you learned that touching a hot stove was a bad thing because it would burn you. Now, it's useful for you to generalize that. Hot stove, don't touch, it burns. So that's a resourceful way of generalizing. And we do it all the time. And it cuts down the amount of information that we need to deal with. So all of that deleting, distorting, and generalizing of information cuts that 12 million bits down to a tiny amount, about 126 bits per session, less than 0.1% of what we started out with. And that's how you form your internal representation. So how you process the world outside of you, how you hold it internally. So that would be pictures in your mind, sounds in your mind, feelings that you have, and also the words that you're saying to yourself, the story you're telling yourself, your internal narrative. And that builds up how you perceive reality. Now, this is where the subjectivity comes in, because you're a massive step away from reality. If reality is 12 million bits of information and you only have 126, you're a long way from reality. So your concept of reality, your model of the world, we say in NLP, is created through your own process of deleting, distorting, and generalizing. And of course, you're not going to select exactly the same 126 bits of information as somebody else. The odds of you doing that are astronomical. And that's why we all think differently. We all have a different view of the world. And together with how our body feels, our physiology, because you don't feel emotions in your head, you feel them in your body. So your physiology and the mind-body connection is super important. And that gives you what we call in NLP a state. That's your emotional content. And your state then drives your behaviour. So a little quick skip through there of the NLP communication model to show you that everything is subjective. Nobody has any view of reality. You can't, because our human neurology is limited to what we can accept. And we can't accept all of the information. So your view on reality, your model of the world is your own, and it's unique to you, like a fingerprint. It's exactly unique to you. Nobody else thinks the same way you do, because nobody else has had the experience that you have. So let's think about time. Let's think about time and let's relate it a little bit, just initially, to how we use it in coaching. Quite often when somebody comes to you, and you've probably had this experience yourself as well, when you have a problem or a challenge, an issue in your life, a lot of the time, the problems that people have and people bring to you as an NLP coach or practitioner relate to time. People have anxiety. Anxiety is an emotion of the future. It's not about now, it's about something that's going to happen in the future. And a lot of problems are also emanating from experiences that have happened in the past. We have much less problematic presentation of things that are actually happening right now. So time is an important element when we think about coaching and how we approach that. So of course we reframe. When people come to us with problems, one of the very first things we do as NLP practitioners is we loosen up that model of the world. We loosen up the boundary that they've put around their problem. And we do that with some elegant reframing. Now, what I want you to start to think about here is that actually, when somebody has a problem that's emanating from the past or it's about the future, then the problem in their neurology is held as a metaphysical illusion. It's not true in now. And I'll say a bit more about that in a little while. So we can start to think about just some of the elements of quantum physics without getting too out there and into theoretical physics. Usable quantum physics. And some of you will have experienced that already because we go into that at NLP master practitioner level. And if you've not got there yet, it's very exciting. So thinking about the quantum world and how we can start to think differently about time. So if we look at the differences between the past and the future, what we're really referring to is our own blurred vision of the world. That's our perception of the passage of time. And that depends on the fact that we can't see the world in all its detail, as we've just talked about with the NLP communication model. We can't. So we have a distorted view of reality. And that's produced by myopia. As human beings, we're quite short-sighted in the fact that we can only deal with subjective experience. Just think about it. If you could see every molecule, if you had really X-ray vision and you could see every molecule in everything, then everything would look the same and the future would look the same as the past. We can't see that. So the human nervous system imposes order that isn't really there. So really, out there is a number of microscopic states that we can't distinguish. So when we think about time, if we think about measuring time, and we have devices now that can measure time very, very accurately, it's been shown that time is affected by altitude and it's affected by speed. So in other words, time is affected by matter and energy. Did you know that time passes faster when you're at altitude than it does at sea level? So if you live up a mountain, time passes faster than if you live by the sea. And time passes more slowly for somebody who keeps moving rather than someone who keeps still. So the person who moves ages less quickly. Interesting. And that connects with all sorts of other topics that we can't really afford to go into right now. So the notion of a present universe is actually meaningless because the notion of something present only refers to things that are close to us, not things that are far away. So present is only true if you can see something in your model of the world. So our present is like a bubble that's around us, and it's a subjective bubble. So let's think about, how does time look? Well, those of you who know NLP and know it well and have worked with time-based NLP, you'll probably recognize a diagram a bit like this. So we tend to represent time in a linear way. So we have our past, which is back then. All the events that happened before the point in time that we term as now. And then there's our future. That's not yet. So the events that will happen after the moment that we call now. And then between the past and the future, there's an interval that is neither. It's not the past and it's not the future. And it still has a minute, infinitesimally small duration. And that's what we call now. And we have to think about, well, now is so small that even by the time I've said now, now is in the past and now is a different time. So now is a really small point in time. So NLP and the neurosciences show us how we perceive and how we experience time. Because your brain is equipped with various mechanisms that track the passage of time. And of course, human beings are imperfect. And so those mechanisms that track time are also far from perfect. One key aspect of the perception of time is your brain's reliance on internal and external cues, like your sense of day and night. So your subjective experience of time can be influenced by a lot of factors, including where your attention is. Remember, in NLP, we say what you focus on is what you get. Your emotional content, your activity, what you're doing, how you're behaving, and how you naturally perceive time. So not having enough time is simply a product of perception. Now, those of you who are well versed in time-based techniques in NLP will know that everybody perceives time in a different way. So some people perceive time as something that is only now. They are in now, they are present. They don't see much at all of their future, and they certainly don't think about their past. They're present, they're in now. And other people are very aware of time. So it's almost like they can see the whole of their past and all of their future stretched out in front of them, and they know exactly where they need to be at what time of day and what happens next. So everybody perceives time slightly differently. And we often simplify in NLP, necessarily so. We create a linear visualization of time. So we have past, present, and future, a longer time line, if you like. And in reality, now is all there is. So when you visualize your own perception of time, it allows you to sort out your memories from back then and your aspirations from not yet. And you can rationalize them in terms of their emotional content. And that means you can facilitate a much bigger focus on now without any interference from the past. So time can be viewed as a mental framework rather than a strict boundary. Albert Einstein put it nicely. He said, the only reason for time is so everything doesn't happen at once. I quite like that. So in this diagram here on the slide, which you might have seen something similar to this in your studies, we have probability waves coming from the past to now. And then we have another set of probability waves stretching out into our future. Now, dependent on how we conceptualize our past, how we view it, how we feel about it, that impacts on now, and it changes the way we think about our future. So if you're coaching somebody that has unresolved issues from their past, absolutely, they're impacting on now. And then that will change the way they think about their future. And it'll affect the choices that they make. So time is a key element when we're coaching. And it's a key element in your own thinking when you think about, how do I close up my past? How do I stop my past from impacting me in now? And how will it change the way I think about my future? So I'm going to come back to that in a little while. Now, when we look at quantum physics, when we look at the quantum reality of time, time isn't linear. So yes, we necessarily make time linear for ourselves and our clients so that they can understand the concept of past, present, and future. And actually, time doesn't necessarily look like that. So in terms of quantum physics, time looks like this. It looks like a light cone. So Einstein's concept of time-space reality comes from this thinking. So in physics, every event has cones of its future and its past events. So rather than have one line with all the events on it, what quantum physics says we have is a series of these light cones. So every event has its own past, it has its own future, and it has that plane of time, space, matter, and energy that represents now. And you'd have one of those for each and every event in your experience. It's a bit like a family tree. So if you're right in the middle, the family tree will go into your future, so all of your children and their children, and it'll have a past of your parents, your grandparents, etc. So it very much goes into a conical shape, up and down. So it's like that. So light travels along the lines that delimit these light cones. That's why they're called light cones. And the theory here is that a common present doesn't exist. We have lots of light cones, each with a present occurring at different places in time. So time isn't linear. Lines are drawn at 45 degrees. And the present that separates our past from our future is imperceptibly small. And it's squashed between the past and the future. So rather than have a completely linear past and future, quantum physics says it looks more like this. So it's more like entropy. We have lots of events all buzzing around each other, and there's no organisation to it. So why do we refer to time as being linear in a line? Because it's easier to imagine, and it fits our current notion of time. Now, in order to understand how is it that we actually think of time in this way, we need to look at how time, as we know it today, actually evolved. Because it did evolve. Time is a human construct. So for centuries, we have divided time into days. Now, the word time derives from an Indo-European root, day, meaning to divide. So we divide the days into hours, the hours into minutes, the minutes into seconds. And for many centuries, hours were longer in the summer and shorter in the winter. Why? Because the 12 hours were divided between dawn and sunset. So the first hour was dawn and the 12th was sunset. So during the winter, an hour was shorter than an hour in the summer. Sundials, hourglasses, water clocks, all existed in our ancient world, all across the Mediterranean and China. And they didn't play the same role as they do today in organising our lives. It's only in the 14th century in Europe that mechanical clocks began to regulate our lives. Cities and villages built their churches and their bell towers, and they built them with clocks to regulate the rhythm of collective activities in the town. And so the era of clock-regulated time began. So clocks became useful as that they all tell the same time. And yet that's a very modern idea. When travel was on horseback or on foot or by carriage, there was no reason to synchronise clocks between one place or another. Midday is by definition when the sun is at its highest in the sky. And every city and every village had a sundial that registered the moment the sun was at its midpoint, allowing the clock on the bell tower to be regulated to the sundial. So the sun didn't reach midday at the same time everywhere because we're moving around the sun from east to west. Now, in the 19th century, in the 1800s, the telegraph arrives and trains are commonplace and they're fast. And that's where the problem arose of properly synchronizing clocks between cities. And in the US, the first attempts were made to standardize time. And it was proposed to standardize time across the globe and fix a universal hour. So midday in London would be midday, a totally different time in New York. And that wasn't very well received as people are attached to their local time. So in 1883, the idea of dividing the world into time zones was suggested as a compromise. And time was standardized within each zone. So then we have time as we know it today. And as you can tell, it was completely constructed by humans to help us to organize our day. Now, Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, was the first to ask the question, what is time? A big question. What is time? And he concluded that what time is how we measure change. Things change continuously, and time is how we count that change. So time is what we refer to when we ask the question, when? Space is what we refer to when we ask the question, where? So time and space work together, when and where. So there is a minimum interval of time. And below that, there is no time. Aristotle said that the world is made of events, not things. And the entire evolution of science suggests that the best grammar for thinking about the world is thinking about it in terms of change rather than of something that's very permanent. Not of being, of becoming. So the difference between things and events is that things persist in time and events have a limited duration. So a stone's a thing. And you can ask yourself, where will it be tomorrow? A kiss is an event. And it would make no sense to ask where a kiss would be tomorrow. So here's a nice thought. The world's made up of a network of kisses, not stones. So the basic units that we comprehend the world by are in a where and a when. Events are spatially and temporally delimited. So even things that are things are actually long events. A stone is a complex vibration of the quantum field, and it will one day disintegrate into dust. So we can't think of the physical world as if it were made up of things, which means the world is a network of events. A storm's not a thing, it's a collection of occurrences. A cloud's not a thing, it's the condensation of humidity in the air. A wave is not a thing, it's the movement of water. A family isn't a thing, it's a collection of relations and feelings. And a person is not a thing. It's a complex process, a chemical process, a process of social relations and a network of emotions which we share with one another. So we can understand the world by studying change rather than studying things. Now, time has a language about it. Our grammar affects our thinking. Now, we know this from NLP. It's our middle name, linguistic. NLP was born out of the work of transformational grammar and transformational linguistics. It's what we're all about. So our grammar, the language that we use consciously and unconsciously, affects our thinking. So what's real for me is different from what's real for you, despite the fact that we use the word real in an objective sense. And of course, we know that nothing is objective, everything is subjective because of our filtering process. So we struggle a bit to adapt our language to the discovery that the past and the future don't have a universal meaning. They're unique to everybody. So time describes how we change things, one in relation to another. So in this way, time is memory and nostalgia. We often talk about the concept in NLP of a gestalt. You might have heard that term, you might not. A gestalt is an experiential unit. So, for example, if you have a memory of something that happened in the past, everything associated with that memory, everything that happened before it, after it, everything you felt in that memory, everything that you recall about that memory, all of those things together, that unit of experience is what we call a gestalt. Now, Fritz Perls, who was the granddaddy of Gestalt therapy, again, one of the people that was modelled by Richard and John when they created NLP, he worked with this concept that every event is a unit. It has everything surrounding it is part of that event. And he said, well, as soon as you break that up, it's not a gestalt anymore. It's like water. H2O. That's the molecule. If you split out the hydrogen and the oxygen, it's not water anymore. it's hydrogen and oxygen. So disturbing a gestalt in that way, by breaking it up, then that experience is no longer there. So if something comes up for a client, or it's coming up for you again and again, it simply means that there's an open gestalt there that hasn't been closed. So the problem hasn't been resolved in the past, and so it can't just recede into the background. It's your unconscious attempt to get to grips with things that feel out of your control. So if we think about, something quite common, let's say grief or bereavement, it isn't the absence of the person you've lost that causes sorrow. It's affection and love. So without affection and love, absence wouldn't cause pain. So even the pain caused by absence can be reframed as something really beautiful because it's based in love. And it feeds on that and gives meaning to our life. So the way that the past affects now isn't necessarily the way that we hold it in our mind. It's how we frame it. So as we move through life, we talk about causality, don't we? Causes affecting what happens in our life. So we want to move from linear causality, so this causes this, to a process. So from why this happens to how this happens. Knowing how something happens gives us structure, it gives us pattern and process, and a deeper understanding of how we get perspective and how we orientate ourselves in the world. Now, that concept is very familiar to you if you know NLP, because in NLP, we don't ask why. We don't look back. We ask how. We look for pattern and process. And we use that to reframe and repattern the way people are thinking in now so that they can create a more compelling future. Clients often want to ask why, don't they? They want to ask why because they want to rationalize and they want to get an explanation for their behavior to protect their self-esteem. Now, what why does, it leads to clever explanations. It leads to an intellectualization. What it doesn't give you is understanding. Fritz Perls, he gave us some quite funny little ways to think about language in therapy. I'm going to share them with you. I hope you're not offended because there are a few little swear words in here. But I'm sure we're all adults over 18. So Fritz Perls said there were 3 classes of language in therapy. The first he called chicken shit. So, how are you? Good morning. Is everything okay? Those questions that we ask that we don't really mean and we don't really want an answer to. Number 2, he called the bullshit. And this was the because rationalization. He's referring to all the reasons and excuses that people give themselves to express their behavior. And then number 3, he called elephant shit. The philosophy, what I'm doing now, the cause of that and the cause of that and the cause of that. So increasing levels of the way that we express what we're doing now in terms of what's happened in the past. So there's now and there's how. Now covers everything that exists. So the past is no more. The future is not yet. And when we think about the future, we're rehearsing. And when people have anxiety, they're expressing a tension between now and not yet. So now is the balance of being here, being aware, where everything is grounded in awareness, being present. Everything has a structure, everything has a behaviour, everything has a process. So there are differences between how we perceive the past and the future. Now, how do we know that something that we perceive as the past is the past? Well, we use artifacts, traces that the past leaves in now. And traces are everywhere. Craters on the moon are traces of the past. Fossils that we find, traces of the past. We have books about our history. We have memories in our mind. So there are lots of things that say to us there was a past. The future, however, doesn't have those traces. So those traces of the past give us a familiar feeling that the past is determined. We know it's there. We have these artifacts, we have these traces that tell us that the past was there. So the lack of traces for the future lead us to believe that the future is open. The traces in the past enable our minds to create an extensive map of our past. And so we believe that we can choose a future and not act on the past. And this is what we call deciding. We think in terms of causes that precede effects. So we say that the cause of a future event is a past event, and the future wouldn't unfold as it does if not for that cause, if not for that thing that happened in the past. Memory, causes and effects, the determined nature of the past and the indeterminacy of the future are just names we give to understand the improbability of the past state in the universe. So all memories are particular to a point in time. Causality, memory traces, the history of the world can only be an effect of perspective. Back to the NLP communication model. So the study of time goes round in a full circle and it comes right back to ourself. The study of time returns us to us. So time creates our identity. We all identify with a certain model of the world. Again, back to the NLP communication model. The NLP communication model explains how we determine our model of the world, our own delusion, distortion, and generalization through our own personal filters. So in ourselves, human beings, we're a complex process. And that complex process is reflecting the world around us and takes that information so that we receive it in a way that is strictly personal to us. Everybody is different. So to reflect the world, we understand it by making it into segments, like fragments. We separate everything to make it uniform and stable so that we can interact with it. So we shape the idea of a human being by interacting with others like ourselves, rather than from looking inside through introspection. So we apply to ourselves those mental circuits that we've developed to engage with other people, our communication skills. Now, here we have that NLP concept of perception is projection. So we are what we see. And we are what we've seen of ourselves, reflected back to us by our friends, our loves, and even our enemies. So at a certain point in time, we learn to project onto ourselves the idea of being human. And that's an additional feature of evolution, how we see ourselves as being human. So perception is projection. It's impossible for you to notice something outside of yourself that hasn't come from you, because you create your own concept of reality. Imagine the world around you is one of mirrors, and what you project out is reflected back at you through the behaviours and the interactions with other people. So we're histories of ourselves. Our thoughts are full of traces from the past. And it's memory that holds together the processes through time of which we are made, which were constructed. So in that sense, we exist in time. So to understand ourselves means to reflect on time, and to understand time, we need to reflect on ourselves. The mind interacts with the passage of time and establishes bridges between the past, present, and the future. And it uses memories of the past to predict the future. So the future that you believe you're going to have will be completely constructed on your experiences of the past. Think about this. If somebody throws you a ball, you will very quickly, unconsciously, predict the position that that ball is going to end up in and put your hand there to catch it. You predict the future position of that ball. When you plant a seed, you're predicting that a plant will grow, because your experience tells you that that's what will happen. So evolution has given us the neurology to make those predictions. And that's what we call the flow of time. So we're always in the present. The past is the past and therefore doesn't exist. And the future is yet to arrive, and so that doesn't exist either. We're in the present and it's instantaneous. So in the present, we only see the present. We see things that are traces from the past. And the passage of time is in here. It's internal. It's integral to our mind. And it shapes all of those artifacts and traces that are there from the past, including our memories. We can use music as an example. If you think about music, it can only possibly occur in time. If we were always present, how can we hear it? Music works because our consciousness is based on memory and anticipation. We have the traces of one note from the past. We've just heard a note, and we anticipate what the next note is going to be from our experience. So that's what we perceive time to be. So it's entirely in the present in our minds, and then we add in memory and anticipation to broaden that out into understanding. So the space around us is shaped by our external senses, how we order things and how we see things in the world around us. So time is shaped by our internal senses, how we order states within ourselves. So, following that through, our reality is formed only by memory, and memory is simply a collection of traces, of artifacts. So we are stories that are contained within our minds. those lines that are drawn by traces left by the mingling together of all the things that we've experienced in the world. And we orientate those towards predicting what's going to happen in the future. So space, memory, and our process of thinking forward in anticipation is how we sense that time is time and that we are ourselves. So time is how we interact with the world, and time is the source of our identity. And we know, especially with our studies in NLP, that we are, as human beings, short-sighted. We are myopic. We can only notice a very small amount of what is actually reality. We don't see the vast electromagnetic system that is emitted by all things. We can't see that. We only have a very tiny window into the world. We can't see with our human eyes the structure of matter or the curvature of space. We just don't see that. So our thinking becomes prey to its own grammar. If you think about language that we use and how we express things, it only took a few centuries from us as human beings to move from talking about devils and angels and witches to talking about atoms and electromagnetic waves. So we hide our emotions as they propel us forward or drag us back. And we do that in our language. And our language compels us to act, and our emotions drive that action. So let's think about, now we know that time is an illusion and that really there is only now. We can start to consider how we treat time when we're coaching our clients or when we're managing our own lives. And I want to just step back to the work of Fritz Perls again here. Fritz Perls talked about the healthy Gestalt principle. So the most important unfinished situation will always emerge and can be dealt with. So something in the past that is incomplete, hasn't been closed down for you, will always keep emerging as that light cone that we looked at earlier that stands out above the rest. It can't yet fade into the background and become part of that entropy of different events, the little light cones everywhere. If we prevent the gestalt from forming, we carry hundreds of unfinished events with us, and they're all demanding completion. So when clients come to you and they're very confused about things that have happened in the past that are actually impacting on now, those are incomplete gestalts. So as NLP coaches, it's our job to help them resolve and close down those events, which are traces and artifacts from the past, and help them to do it in now. Now, Fritz Perls said that we have 5 layers in our psyche. So he said we have a cliche layer. And anybody who's read the work of Fritz Perls knows that he had quite a good sense of humour, as you're probably already noticing from what I've shared already. So he said we have a cliche layer. That's, how are you? Meaningless tokens when we meet people. We go into role playing, we put on a mask. And I'm guessing almost everybody who's listening today will identify with that putting on a mask. So when you go to work, putting on that mask, or when you're with your family, putting on that mask, or in your social situation. So he called it being superficial, social, as if our psyche works in layers, Well, I have to be this person when I'm here, and I have to be this person when I'm there. He says we have an impasse psyche, so feeling stuck and lost, avoiding things, especially avoiding frustration. And then an implosive layer. This is where we go into paralysis. We contract and we compress ourselves. And that's usually between impasse and implosive, where we get clients presenting to us. And what we want to take them into is explosion. The authentic person who's capable of experiencing and expressing their emotions so that we can work with that. So how might we deal with traces from the past in coaching? So this would be a whole different workshop. I could talk for another day or two about this. So just very lightly, when somebody has an incomplete gestalt in their past and it keeps hitting them in the face in now, this thing that's unresolved, and they come to you and they talk about it, this happened and it's still affecting me and I can't get away from it. It's causing me to be stuck. I can't move forward. What they're actually talking about, remember, if time doesn't exist, so the past is back then, it's already gone. The future is not yet, it's not there. All we have is now. It's useful to begin to change the person's thinking about the emotions that they're feeling. Because people will say, this happened to me in the past. Let's just, for example, say, it made me feel angry. And I'm still angry. And they believe that they're feeling the same anger as they felt when they experienced the thing in the past. They're not. That's impossible. The anger was an appropriate emotion in the moment they felt it, and then it was gone. What they're actually feeling in now is what we call a meta emotion. It's a feeling about a feeling. So the problem that they're having is the meta emotion. They're still feeling mad as hell about that thing that happened in the past that made them angry. So if we deal with now, we deal with the meta emotion rather than having them believe that they're still feeling emotion from the past, we can get a far more impactful resolution to the problem that they're experiencing. Now, what happens with meta emotions is that they can very quickly turn into an emotional storm, like a hurricane, like a spiral. And we've all experienced this, we've just never stuck a label on it. So something happened in the past. Let's say you got a bit hurt. And in now, you're feeling angry about the fact that you felt hurt. So angry is the meta emotion. That's the problem. Not the hurt in the past, the anger you're feeling about it in now. So then you start to feel quite sad about the fact that you're angry all the time. And then you start to feel a bit frustrated by the fact that you feel sad about the anger, about the hurt that happened way back then. And then you start to feel a bit guilty about feeling sad, about feeling frustrated, about feeling angry, about the hurt you felt back then. And the emotions start to spiral. So this is what we call an emotional storm. When we're working with clients or even in your own thinking, what we want to do is dissipate the storm by dealing with the meta emotion. So we do keep coaching simple by talking to the client about the past, the present, and the future, and thinking about it as a line, because it's easier for them to understand. Now, we know as coaches, as practitioners or master practitioners, we always need to be thinking at least two logical levels above that of the people we're coaching or we're training. So understanding a bit more about time and how there is only now allows you to explain linear time in a highly metaphorical way to your clients. And in the background, you as the practitioner or the master practitioner, the trainer or the coach, you understand the mechanisms that we're actually using when we work with our clients. So this is where a bit of quantum thinking is very useful. It allows you to elevate your thinking above that of the people that you work with. So what now? What do we do with all of this information about the fact that time is only the way that you perceive it? Time is only the way that you perceive it. So given that time can be perceived as an illusion, how can you apply it to improve your utilization of time? So even if we embrace the concept that time is flexible and that you can influence your experience of it, then you can no longer claim that you don't have enough time, because time is your own experience. And once you made that mindset shift, you can alleviate anxiety about deadlines and about fitting everything in. And it'll allow you to approach tasks in a much more relaxed and focused way, and with an attitude around time is how I create it. Time is how I choose to think about it, how I allow it to influence my behaviour. Just consider for a moment how your beliefs about time influence your behaviour, and more importantly, how they influence your stress levels. So we have this notion, let's challenge it, that time is always running out and that you must constantly rush to stay ahead of things. Challenge that, and instead begin to cultivate a healthier relationship with time by recognizing that time is a construct, a human construct. And you can navigate that human construct because it comes from within you. And so rather than time being a relentless force that you've got to obey, it can be something that you can navigate and get in control of. So our words and the language that we use and how we express time drives us. Think about that stone bridge. It was now solid and it seemed to glow in the morning sun. The stone bridge glowed behind the traveller, stretching across the canyon. He then knew a truth that would forever serve him. And that was, the path to your future isn't revealed before you start. It's created as you move. And the lighthouse keeper thought, what if nobody sees the light? And when he saw that wreckage on the shore, he found the message in a bottle. And the message read, thank you for the light. We made it through. And now he had an understanding. You don't shine for applause. You shine so that others can find their way. And as the gardener dug up his garden, there was room for sunlight again. And that's when he realised you can't grow new life in soil which is still crowded by the plants of yesterday. So, guys, I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas. I know I've chucked a lot at you in the last hour and 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Let's see if we can navigate some new thinking and ideas. So I'm going to stop sharing so that if anybody would like to share their thoughts and ideas, that would be amazing. Over to you. Silence. We have a look in the chat.
I'm happy to share a little bit. I really appreciated that because in my work, I find all the human constructs of time really interfere with progress so much. You know, I've recently been coaching two particular women who are in high pressured leadership roles in, I'm going to say, big four type companies. And what is constantly weaponized against them is time. And it's so good to even be able to have a conversation. Like, I love explaining things by the history of things, and I really found interesting that whole thing of day being different in the past. So even sort of saying that we make up time to create urgency is really interesting, you know. So I really appreciate it. There's so much to think about that. So great thoughts coming into my head now. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, Mary-Louise. I really enjoy hearing, you know, how people can utilize just this little snippet of what I've shared today. You know, and I really hope that helps you move forward a bit with some of your clients. Yeah. And you're so right. I love the way you termed that, weaponizing time, because it's so true. Yeah. People get beaten over the heads with it.
Yeah, deadlines. I hate the words.
Yeah. It's a horrible word, isn't it? Dead.
Yeah.
Line. Yeah.
Hi, Christine.
Lucy.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Nigel. That was just me
sorry.
laughing.
Yeah, I was trying. I couldn't find where you put your hand up to sort of say hello. But just to congratulate you, I thought that was an amazing presentation. I loved your stacking realities as well, of the stories at the beginning and the end. Very good. Yeah, so I'm a hypnotherapist as well, and I always use time work with clients, and it's just fabulous just to sort of have it reiterated, like using the map is not the territory, and taking that when you go into the future, you take that sort of presupposition of NLP that you can change your map at that new point in time, or whatever time is, and it seems to work really, really well, because, you know, obviously, as you know, the subconscious mind doesn't really have a concept of time, and so getting over that solves a lot of people's issues or problems within their own maps. So yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Nigel. And I think you're quite right. And it always comes back for me that some of the simplest, most fundamental elements of NLP and hypnotherapy are the things that make the biggest difference to your clients and the people that you work with.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we forget them because they are so foundational to us. It's like, oh, that's bread and butter stuff. I don't need to work with that. And actually, those are the things that make the difference. You know, and the map is not the territory. Alfred Korzybski's thinking is one of the most insightful things we have. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so true. I mean, just using the basics, like, you know, you have all the resources that you need. I mean, literally, that's just it. You take them to that new map. They already have it, and it works. And
It's connected. Yeah.
I love your line about using, the neurological levels of change, that you always have to be at least 2 levels above the client. That's absolutely really great. That was really good for me. I love that.
Thanks, Nigel. Just so you know, the raise hand function is at the bottom of the Zoom menu on the screen. It actually says raise hand, which will help people to, if you don't have that, move your mouse up and down over the menu. If that's still not showing, then we can wave hands at the screen, and I'll put people on. No, Linda, I think you want to have a word there. Please ask your question, Linda.
Well, I just want to say, I mean, I did some training in NLP some years ago, but I haven't actually practiced it really. So, but I've long had the concept of elastic time. Sometimes time seems a lot longer, and other times it seems shorter. And I always love it when you look up, you're under pressure, and you look up at the clock and you say, "Phew, gosh, it's only that time," instead of, "Oh crap, oh help, is that the time?" And it just shows that time, we don't really have a concept of time at all. It's except sort of like by the watch, although some people can tell quite accurately what time it is if they don't wear a watch. So yeah, there sort of is and isn't.
Yeah, there's that internal clock, isn't there, that some people are very attuned to. Yeah. And what you say about time distortion, Linda, I mean, that's so true. It's no more true than when we're in an altered state in hypnotherapy, where you close your eyes, you open your eyes, and the hypnotherapist tells you you've been there an hour. It's time distortion, and it happens all the time. Yeah.
It was absolutely fascinating. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you.
Laura.
Hi. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. For me, watching that time cone image that you put up, it was like, oh my gosh, you've just nailed exactly how I view time. And I absolutely love that. And what was going through my head as you was talking is, I work with a lot of children and teens and young adults that have a lot of anxiety. And I also think with, perhaps the pandemic and that sort of like that stopping, that actually we're just trying to push kids into the construct of our time in the world, when actually their natural, I can't remember what you called it, but like their natural, I suppose, construct of time, I suppose they haven't really got one. And we're teaching that to them, but we're trying to push them more quickly than being ready. We're trying to push them out of the now into either the past or the future, probably a little bit too quickly, especially when they've had all this other stuff going on in the environment with the pandemic. So I just thought, how can we get this out to all the teachers and parents that are in a I suppose a child-friendly way, to help them understand that it's okay for us to all have a different perception of time. So thank you.
Absolutely, Laura. And I think you're so right in that we move children into that structure of time and into that cause effect thinking. Yeah. Even if we think about the pandemic, I'm like I am now because I had to stay at home back then. Yeah. And they're already linking that together in their young neurology, and their neurology isn't big enough to cope with that. And then our kids start getting anxious and they start having difficulties, and then that impacts on behaviour. And then you've got a whole spiral of process that happens in the education system for these poor kids. And I think you're right. We need to allow children to operate in now, because they're little present people. They don't think about tomorrow. They don't think about last week. They're present people, and they're just in the now, and they're so creative. And we can just force them out of that so easily and so quickly. So yeah, I think you're really intuitive there. Yeah.
Thank you, Laura. Lucy.
Hi. Oh, excuse me, frogs in my throat. Christine, I just love what you said there about present people, little people, because I work with children as well, and very small children compared to Laura. And I just notice as well the language that parents use. It's quick, hurry up, get into the car, move. We have got to, whatever, be somewhere else, and on time, and move along. And all this language, excuse me, is very taking them out of the now and putting pressure where there doesn't need to be pressure. And I was working with one little boy in a one-to-one one time, and only because it was a one-to-one situation, I could allow him more time. He was spinning something as he thought of his answer. But if I was in a class situation or with a family, we would have had to move on to the next thing. And then he came out with something that was just pure precious. So I think the language we use with our own children or with very small children is critical. So thank you for your talk. I have so much to think about, because time and me have never got on.
Oh, thank you, Lucy. And you're completely right about, the language that parents use. It's just full of modal operators of necessity.
Yeah, absolutely.
and kids are little sponges. They pick up and they learn habits from their parents, and they learn the language of it from their parents too. So I really am with you on that. Yeah.
Thank you, Lucy. David.
Hello. Let me just lower that hand. Christine, thank you very much. That was really, really insightful and very interesting. I came with a bit of skepticism, healthy skepticism, I have to say. But you got me with the cones, and then the actual the way you described that as us being at the center of a family tree really helps me a great deal, and I'm going to use this as I go forward, because you're absolutely right. We are the compound makeup of our ancestors going right the way back, and we are the potential start of another branch or branches as such, and to put that into the concept of looking at time in a different way, I find very useful, and I'll be able to use that with a couple of people in particular. Oh, and this is my map of the world, by the way, behind me. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Oh, Amanda.
I'm sorry, I couldn't work out how to do the fancy raising hand thing. Apologies for that. Christine, that was absolutely brilliant. From start to finish, I was completely, I felt like I was in your room with you. It was just brilliantly delivered. So I just want to say thank you for that. What jumped out for me was when you were talking about the meta emotion. And often I work with kids and families and parents, and often it's the emotions that we sort of unpack. And I love almost like the separation of the emotion that happened in the past and the emotion that happened that's actually happening now, and the spiral effect with all of the anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt all going, oh, let's just keep going round. This is a fun little merry-go-round. Let's keep going. It was just, I loved your descriptions. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So thank you for putting that all together. It was just brilliant.
Oh, thank you so much, Amanda. Yeah.
And Charlotte.
Hello. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was a little bit late coming online. Sorry about that. I wanted to ask you a question, Christine. You know that the slide with explaining time, the history of time as the construct. Have you ever shown that to a client? And if you have, what sort of response have you received? Because I would love to use that with clients.
Absolutely. When a client is so stuck in now because of something that they've experienced in the past, and they talk all the time about the past, it was the past, something that happened in the past, and I need to describe to them this concept of time not really existing, I will tell them that little story. And it helps if you tell them the story with a few embedded suggestions and some hypnotic language embroidered through it, so that you can relax them and you can open up the critical faculty at the same time. So you have greater access to integrated thinking. So please take that and use it with your clients if they are stuck with this concept of time. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Will we get it on the website afterwards, or would you post it on an email, or how would you do this?
I can certainly do that for you, Cash. Karen, how would you like me to facilitate that?
Christine, if you can share the slides with us, then we can just add them on as a resource when we upload the video onto the website. So that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who's got mind-boggling and mind-blowing questions or thoughts? But in perfect timing then. Thank you. Thank you, Christine. I have to say, I obviously have a negative anchor to the word quantum, because as soon as you mentioned quantum, my brain just discombobulated. So thank you so much for bringing it all back together for me and making sense of it, and pulling so many interesting things together and linking the illusion of time with the presuppositions. And I love the cones and what everybody else has said. And Cash shares something that we saw on a TV program ages ago, that he talks about every moment being 500 years in the making. And I think the light cones is a perfect model for that. So thank you so much. You've clearly created a lot of reflection and thinking in what you've shared with us over the last 90 minutes. I think I may have to go back and watch the recording again. And I think I'll learn something different next time around. And definitely I did pick up on the bit that time passes more slowly for those who move. So I'm going to take up marathon training now. So thank you on behalf of everybody who's been here today. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely inspiring, and I've learned a great deal, and I think everybody else has done as well. So thank you, Christine. Very much appreciate it, and look forward to watching the replay again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and it's wonderful to meet everyone. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook or anything like that, go ahead. You know, send me an invite. I love to make new connections.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. And we will see you. Our next NLP virtual workshop will be sometime in 2026. So thank you for closing out 2025 for us, Christine, as well.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks a million, Christine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen and Cash, for organising. Wonderful, Christine. I'll re-listen, take notes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.